Tyler, welcome to Into the Woods month on Adventures in Design. So nice to meet you digitally before I get to meet you in the real world at the end of the next month. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing well. Thanks for having me. I did get the memo to wear the same denim style shirt as you, so we're kicking it off really well.
That's right. Yeah, looks like a couple of Crips hanging out talking about design today. So it's interesting because, in your bio where you go around and you talk to folks about what it is you've been able to do, you drop in there not six figures, not seven figures, eight figures. Eight figures is when we start paying attention. We're like, damn, I'd be good with two figures back, but he shot the moon over to eight. Eight figures is when we start paying attention. But what I love about your story, a lot like mine, first you had to take it to the people. And whereas I grew up building my business around the art festivals and doing the craft fairs, because I quickly realized something. If you sell something to strangers, you don't have to deal with clients. And that was very appealing to me as a creative. And I know when you were building your stationery company, you and your buds didn't have like a Sprinter van. You didn't have all these luxury things dialed in. You literally went to farmer markets. And if you and I are both being honest, in the world of business, it's like a step away from being a busker where you're playing guitar on the corner. It's really kind of humiliating. It's kind of the lowest bar of entry. But man, once you start get it going and you leave with that sack of cash, you go, I feel like I'm cheating the world because I just figured out how to keep doing this thing that I love in the way that most people wouldn't even think would be possible.
Yep, for sure, for sure. I mean, we started doing just these small little teeny events on Utah State campus. It was poetry and a beverage, and there'd be 100 people there, and we'd set up a little table. And I remember the first person who just came out, they pulled out a $10 bill and bought a notebook from us. And I was like, wait a minute, people like this? And then you talk about farmers markets. I remember our first market event was where we actually paid to attend was up in Boise, and it was the Tree Fort Music Festival.
Okay.
And it was going to cost us $300 to exhibit there right next to the beer tent. And it was going to take us, 3 hours to drive there. And I was terrified to spend $300 to go and set up for 2 days at this massive concert venue. But when you talk about walking away with, some cash and feeling like this is a whole new world. I mean, we talked to hundreds of people during that event, and we pretty much sold out of products. And we drove up there without a table. And we knew that when we got there, we're going to have to track down a table. And we started knocking on local businesses. And one guy luckily was like, hey, I'll let you borrow this table, but it only has 3 legs. And so we're like strapping with duct tape some wood to get a 4th leg on there. But when we walk away, completely hearing the feedback from people, and they pull out their wallets and validate what we're doing and say, hey, I like what you're doing. I want to buy a notebook. It's an incredible feeling, and it's a total different ballgame for sure.
I remember the first time Beth and I went to South by Southwest and I sold my first ever art print. The guy was like, I want that one up there. And it happened to be the most expensive print we had in the booth. It was $50. And that was like overreaching. And I was like, you do? And Beth's like, just bag it. Like she's like elbowing me. Like we look like sitcom characters.
Yeah.
I never had the problem of not having a table since I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. We just take tables with us wherever we go, because you never know when you're going to need to jump through one. But man, next time you're speaking, you need to tell people like, look, man, I started this business on a 3-legged table. You do something harder. You start a business on a 3-legged table. But Tyler, there's something else that I love about your story, because it's so easy to focus on people's finishing lines, where they end up. But I always think it's fascinating to see where they start, because there's so many people that are afraid to start. And I know that you've seen this before. People do like productive procrastination. Well, I'm going to work on my business plan. No, the business plan is start making business happen, start selling, start thinking what it is.
For sure.
I, like you, college was like a stepping stone to try to figure out employment and what I wanted to do. And so I went to my college professor when I was going to school for, back then, communication arts, because it was before it was, graphic design.
Yep.
And I said, hey, we're doing these projects for make-believe companies. To really do real design work, it should be for a real company, because real companies require real problem solving. He's like, yeah, I don't care what you do. But what he didn't know is he just gave me permission to build a portfolio in class. And I took that work that I did at my community college, I took it around to 3 businesses, picked up 2 of them as clients, and went, I think I just graduated from college. And I know that, like, you built your business while you were still on the clock. And I heard you say this, hey, I'm in school. I got to do something while I'm here. Why not really build my future? And I just love that you saw it that way, of like, life doesn't start after this. Life is happening right now. And I love that you hit the ground running, man.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, it was, for me, it was a game-changing experience, because I had done some school in Virginia, and then I came to transfer to Utah State, and my schooling didn't transfer. And I had done a graphic design program 2 years through high school as well. That was college credit. And it was a top program on the East Coast. It was amazing. Bowie High School, little shout out right here. And, but nothing transferred to Utah State. And I just had this eye-opening experience where I thought, you know what? I'm going to start over here. I might as well do some things that I wished I would have done before. Like, I'm getting a second chance. And so for me, it was all about, okay, now that I'm starting over, what do I wish I would have done? Okay. And part of that was starting businesses. And I started really exploring entrepreneurship, and signed up for, they didn't have an entrepreneurship major at that time.
Wow.
And so I started signing up for some of the management classes that were entrepreneurship classes, but they were under the management degree.
Wow.
And so I jumped into those entrepreneurship classes, and I was like, hey, all these students are setting up internships. I want to set up an internship for my business. And so I got like 6 credits for being an intern for my own business. And then in each one of the entrepreneurship classes that I took to get an entrepreneurship minor, I talked to the professors and said, hey, I'm starting a business right now. Is it okay if I use my business for this class? And the entire curriculum for each one of those classes was shifted to fit, hey, well, here's what I'm building right now. And so I got all these credits and was able to build my business while I was in school. And yeah, it was incredible.
It's such an amazing viewpoint that some of us have. And like, 2 things out of that, taking me back to so many moments in my life. Listen to that. I knew a couple of people that had built record labels while they were in college. It was a college project, and then it goes on to be Doghouse Records. And because his wife's sister sees All American Rejects, Dirk signs All American Rejects and makes big money, and it became like a legit record label. And my friend Andy over at Initial Records, and I looked at those guys build record labels. I'm like, yeah, if they're building record labels out of college, I could build a freelance career out of college. Sure. And I think it just comes to that idea of, where are you at? Do you want to wait for the world to give you permission, or do you want to give yourself permission? And I think that you bring up something really important, is that at the time, there were no entrepreneurial classes. And I think you and I, because of our age, we were really brought up in a version of America that teaches you how to be an employee, right? How to land in middle management. And when you look at the Steve Jobses of the world, they thought outside of the box. And I know everybody wants to fancy themselves as a rebel, but being a rebel doesn't necessarily mean being like a, motorcycle bad boy. It's looking at the rules that are being handed to you and go, how can I bend this and manipulate this more in my favor? So I just love that about your story, is that, like myself and a lot of my peers, you were just like, I'm not going to wait to get that piece of paper that says I've made it. I'm going to make it on my way to getting that piece of paper.
For sure. It's funny. A few years ago, I was in Boston. I had a meeting at Staples headquarters, and wrapped up the meeting, and their headquarters is 45 minutes from the airport. So I call an Uber, and the guy pulls up to pick me up, and he looks like a pretty cool dude. And so I said, hey, is it cool if I sit up front? And he was like, yeah, man, jump in. So I sit down, we got 45 minutes, and he asked me what I was doing at Staples. And then he said, "Oh, you started that company?" And I was like, "Yeah, I started the company." And he said, "Oh man, I'm in the middle of starting a business right now." And I said, "Well, we got 45 minutes, my man. So tell me about it." And he told me about it. And he had been a real estate agent for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And he had figured out this way to take photos and videos of these properties and to post them online that would sell them like 10 times faster than previous.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, this is cool. Tell me a little bit more." And I said, "What's your next step?" And he said, "Well, I just signed up for 2 years of a photography class and a photography program." And I'm like, "Okay." And I said, "Hey, can I ask you a question? As a mentor outside over here." And he said, "Please, I want to get this thing going." And I said, "Are you passionate about the photography and video process and just delivering the perfect asset that makes people smile and is wowing them and creating that? Or are you passionate about the business side and bringing this value to the world and building the business?" I asked him that. And he said, "Oh, by far, I'm passionate about the business side." And I said, "Well, why on earth did you just sign up for 2 years of your life to go through this photography course?" Now, the other thing, as creatives, you can be a little more business minded, or you can be totally focused on the creative side, and you can build businesses either direction.
Right.
Right. And I wanted to make sure I understood his passion. And so I said, "Look, if you're passionate about the business side, and when you talk about thinking outside, I said, you can start this business today." And he was like, "What?" I
Yep.
said, "There are hundreds, if not thousands, of insanely talented photographers that are right here in this Boston area, that if you already know these real estate agents that want to buy it, you can call them up, see what they'd pay for it, go to the photographers, see what they would charge for it, make sure you have some room for your income in the middle, and now you have a business today." And he was like, "Wow."
Yeah.
But that's the type of thought that it's not really taught there. If you can create these win-win situations in the world and you solve big problems, that's how you can build successful businesses and great income, is by solving great problems and creating win-win scenarios. And so
I mean, I really see that as some people like yourself, you have the ability to see the straight line between what the obstacle is and the outcome to success. And other people see a very curved line. Our guy, the Uber driver, is like, "Well, I got to learn how to do photography. Then after to do photography, I'm going to need to do this. I'm going to need to do that." And that gets back in that productive procrastination. Like, he's moving forward on his goal, but my God, it's going to be 8 years by the time he gets there. Whereas folks like ourselves are like, hire somebody to do photos, build the business right now, pay for some photos to get a demo website going, start getting clients. The money that comes in from clients, that's your seed money for photographers. And it builds and builds and builds. But, I always think about it this way. And once again, something else that I know that we have in common is you never wait till you get here to the desk to do the work, right?
mm-hmm. Right.
You said once, I heard, that you love to walk to work or walk when you can, because that gives you the ability to occupy your brain. I'm going to fight back on that one, because my best thought comes to me when I drive. Like when I'm behind the wheel, it's just like a part of my brain just opens up, or also in the shower, like the watery sensory and all that stuff. But I've always said this to people: you've got to be doing the work in your head so that when you finally get to the Adobe program of your choice and hit Apple in, it's not "what am I going to do" time, it's go time, right? And I love that idea of walk to work. Like, take the ideas with you so that when you get there, you're already ready to play. And I think that's just part of what makes you so successful, is that's your mindset. No wasted time. Nothing gets in the way. Like, just always be looking on to the next thing. And now that you're teaching that to people, I'm sure you're blowing people's minds, because it's a surprising thing to you and I, but not everybody sees the world that way. And it's insane.
For sure. Yeah. Not everybody sees it that way. The other layer I would add into that is, if you are exploring your passions too. If you've got a list of things that you're passionate about, whether it's roller skates or, hockey or whatever it is, if you've got that list of passions and you're exploring in your mind those passions and how you can add value to the world. And so when you're walking, when you're driving, whatever it is, you can entertain yourself and be productive at the same time because you're focusing on those passions. And when you can take multiple passions and find a way to intersect them, like I just talked about roller skates, but if you take roller skates and combine it, let's say you're also passionate about houseplants, and now all of a sudden you start find a way to combine those two things that don't belong together.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take roller skates and then make actual pots out of them and put cool house plants, or do that as an illustration. Now all of a sudden you have this source of innovation and creativity that the world doesn't think about. Take two things that don't relate together and in your mind find a way to combine them, and then all of a sudden you're on your way to building a business, finding something that people want to buy from you.
And Tyler, that was so important for you when you decided, okay, I love notebooks. It's a tool of my trade. You're obviously like a thought mapper. You're always getting your thoughts out. You're setting a course for where you're going. And so you love the notebook, but then you also had to realize what makes a notebook special. So it's exactly what you just said. You had to deep dive inside of you and say, what are my interests? What are my thoughts? How does that intersect with the notebook? And how can I make myself different in the stationery market, which is a huge market? And, some notebooks are just completely tactile and have no personality to them. And then others are sought after in a sacred space where at the end of a long day, that's where you write, the things that you hope that nobody else would see it. But I've always wrote in every diary as if somebody else was going to read it. That was kind of weird to me. Different conversation for a different time. But I do love that, you took something that it's like, well, how are you going to make a notebook special, dummy? And when you did this, MP3 players, iPhones, technology as an all-time rocket ship to the moon. And you're like, check it out. Paper that folds up in your back pocket. Dialed in. But you showed that with separating yourself in the marketplace, combining that with your personality and your interests, dude, you've created a hell of a stationery brand.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. I mean, for me, I've always been avid notebook user, journal user, sketchbook user. And when I was just exploring passions, I wanted to do something. At the time, I had focused on building another business and was in the creative throes there of building this. It was a tech business. It was an app where you can reserve parking at large entertainment venues.
Yeah, I love that.
And so you just pick your spot and then you get a QR code, you show up to the venue and they scan it when you go into the lot and you got your spot. And so I was focusing on the design and the creative aspect of that and how to build that process. And my partners in school, this was the first business we were going after. They graduated and I was going to finish school. And so I sold my shares. And then that's where I had this lump sum. And I was like, okay, now I want to do something that I'm passionate about. I wasn't super passionate about parking, to be honest. But, so I just made that list of passions, and I've always been an artist, but people said, don't be an artist. You're never going to make a living. You're never going to do anything. We all heard that. Right? You're never going to do anything in this world. And so for me, I just was poring over a notebook of what can I do to show people that art can change the world? And I was writing, and like you said, I was walking to work, coming up with as many ideas as possible. No idea was a bad idea at this point. And at one point I just had sketched out this nerd. And my sister-in-law walked up and she was like, oh, that would be so cool if you put that on the cover of the notebook. And right there, the bells went off. And I was like, yes, why? These products that we pour our creative souls into, why is there not a brand that's celebrating that and putting that on the cover? And a brand that is doing something big and better with the artwork, standing for something. And this was in 2011 when Tom Shoes was really strong in the market and Instagram was coming strong on the scene. And so for me, it was right there that it happened, in a notebook, in a sketchbook. where I had the idea. And obviously I had used all types of brands, from Mead to brands that I really admire and respect, like Field Notes and Moleskine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those guys, great brands, but I wanted to do something with the art focus and the giving back. And so I just started reaching out to artists on Instagram and said, hey, I bought some machinery. I want to print your art on notebooks and sketchbooks. And with everything we sell, we'll hook you up with some of it. And then we'll use part to build schools. So you don't have to be Picasso to make an impact with your art. We can do it today together. And again, it was that win-win-win-win situation. And not a lot of people said no.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that a lot of people from the outside don't know about the art community, is that artists, to a fault, sometimes are always ready to like help somebody out, you know, and
For sure.
like, hey, I want to put your artwork on a notebook. I want to give you a commission of that. And in the process, we're both going to donate money to the idea is that you help build schools, correct? That's where the money
Correct.
back. So it's kind of, the notebook is like a full circle idea of creatives are using it, but it goes back to where we all got notebooks in the first time.
Yep.
Man, I love back to school supply shopping, dude. That was,
Yeah.
woo, dude, just that fresh bag of new school supplies. Man, I love those days.
Yeah. Same here. Exploring all the different folder designs.
Hmm.
You know, got the pug here, got Lisa Frank over here, all types, you know, Trapper Keepers.
Hell yeah, dude. The Trapper Keepers, that like the artwork made no sense. It was like the future
Right.
was melting, you know. It was like there's like a cheetah print rip in there, but also the like puffy paint neon swirls. It's like, I would love to know the guys that just got like super high, like, we're making Trapper Keepers today, man. Who knows where we're going next? But like, what you essentially did though is you found kind of what a lot of us know, is that, you know, everybody, like when I watch these, you know, reality shows, the person's like, I'm really crazy, I'm really different. I'm like, no, you're not. Anybody who says that is not crazy and not different. And you sort of resonated in with what a lot of us know, is that we're a tribal animal. We're not so different. So when you started making these notebooks based on the art that you like, the artists that you appreciate, essentially the scene that you belong in, and because you curate it around your personal experience, you found more people that saw the world like you did. And you were essentially, by making a product for yourself, you were making a product for them, because it was authentic. And you weren't like, well, we talked to our investors and redbirds are really big, so we need everybody to draw redbirds this season. You know, like, I think that when I look at it, that's why it hit so well in that moment, when there was Field Notes and you know, all the other ones that were sort of trendy in that same window, where you came in and took some market share.
And still to this day, I mean, it's a differentiator in the market.
Mm-hmm.
And it's memorable. And if you can be totally consistent at that differentiation, right? Decide on something, find that niche or that niche, however you want to say it. And
Who knows?
nobody knows. But find that thing and then just be so consistent, because, you know, as an artist and a creative, you want to make a living here. You got to find what people are willing to buy from you, that they're going to open up their, as my grandma would say, they're going to open up their pocketbooks,
Yeah.
right? And pull out cash and pay you for it. And the only way to do that is, yes, you know, pursue your passions, just give priority to your passions and be consistent with it, and find those people who agree.
But you also did something that's very important in this like over media saturated world that we live in, right? You're selling an analog product
Yep.
that everybody has already bought before. You've never probably ever sold somebody their very first notebook, or at least the person who paid for it, it wasn't the first time they'd bought a notebook. Maybe they gave it to a child who was their first one, but you've probably statistically never sold an adult their first notebook. So what made your product different was you did what all the masters know. You put story into your product. So the cover is Act 1. Act 2 is the interior cover, where you get to learn about the person that made the art. And then Act 3 is the empowerment of the consumer. So you're educating and empowering, which is what every good product or piece of media does. And so this is how it works to everybody at home. This is why this is a good product. Someone picks it up and go, oh, this is really cute. Then they open up and they go, Oh, it supports an artist and it supports a cause. And then they see the blank pages and they see their own possibilities to put in there. And they feel like if they're planting their ideas, hopes, and dreams in this notebook, they already know that it goes back to support two things that are important to them: community and the arts. You nailed it, dude. You absolutely nailed how to take something that had been around for a couple hundred years and make it feel relevant to a new consumer base. Congratulations.
Hey, thank you. I want you to know that I'm also recording this call so that I could use that in our marketing, because you just nailed it right there. I mean, you put that perfectly. And I feel pretty humble and emotional that that's how it's come to be, and that's how it was day one, and it's unfolded that way, and people love it and appreciate it. And at the end of the day, every one of our customers, every one of our team members, we can look at what we're doing and being involved with.
Yeah.
And we know that it's more than just a notebook. We know that it's more than just sales. It's more than just partnerships with retailers or partnerships with other brands. Like, at the end of the day, there's something more there. And it's that little extra energy and oomph to get to work every day.
But that's really your mindset with your whole 360 view of this company, that you could see that there was a little something extra there. Like, you absolutely slayed it when I heard you say that you were too focused on the bottom line. So you were packing boxes of books that easily one of your friends would have did for $15 an hour. And then you started to run the math and you go, when I'm not doing sales calls where I average out $200 an hour, and then I go do a 20-hour a job, we're not saving $20 an hour. We're losing $180 or more dollars an hour. So I think that, you've built this company, which is great, but now you've realized that you have the gift to look at what you've done. You've been able to take all these problem solving and create into solutions, but you also realize that, unlike a lot of people, you have the personality and capability to explain this to others. So just like that one little example of you being able to quickly give people numbers and math, and once again, tell them a good story where everybody who's sitting in one of your workshops goes, holy shit, am I being the guy that's trying to save $20 an hour and I'm actually losing $180 an hour? Like, I think that that's where you got into this next part of your career, is that, do you ever feel like you see a path that you wish everybody else could see? But once again, back to my earlier analogy, you're like, it's just a straight line, guys. And when they tell you what they see, they just see all the curves and the bends in the road. Like, I love talking shop with people because I'm always trying to give them my perspective, because I think a lot of people overcomplicate things.
Absolutely. It's funny because I talk to artists and creatives and entrepreneurs all the time. I usually, in settings like this, I open up my calendar. Unfortunately, I did that recently at a commencement talk for an online art course, and my calendar completely filled up all the way through October.
Whoa.
So I'm gonna throw out my email here for any of your listeners who want to hit me up, and we can find a time to link up, because I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for the people that gave me 30 minutes of their time. So my email is just tyler@denik.com. So tyler@denik.com. Hit me up if you're an artist, a creative, an entrepreneur, you're pursuing things, you want to chat for 30 minutes, talk shop. I'm in a spot where I'd love to give some of that time to help. But for me, it's been work really hard until you learn how to work smart.
Yeah.
And then work really freaking hard at working smart.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's been my career path. And the story that you shared, that was after we brought on a couple like-minded investors who had built some consumer product brands. And I got an MBA just learning from them every day for a couple of years of here's how to build processes. Here's how to focus in the market. Here's how to win deals with major brands. And so that learning, it comes from hustle, but it's also so valuable to have some mentors and some people who can coach and give a little bit of guidance and direction. It's tremendously valuable, because as a creative, you're going to be working hard.
Oh yeah.
And man, you just got to figure out how to work smart. If you can find those pieces of working smart, that's scalable.
It is. And, I think that one of the things that is often sort of ignored is that people think that, well, I sit at my desk from 8 a.m. till like, 6, and then I have dinner with the family, and then I do the second shift till 4 a.m. And I'm like, well, congratulations. You're going to put yourself in an early coffin. But I always say that my best ideas, and I know this is the same for you, they don't come when I'm sitting at this desk.
Mm-hmm.
It is in Palm Springs. It is driving the car. Like you see it all from a distance, right? And when you give people that, overly simple advice, work hard so you can work smart, then work really hard at working smart. That comes with, and forgive me if I'm guessing this part wrong, Tyler, but you're constantly analyzing your day, your week, your month, your year. You're constantly looking at it and go, if I do this a little bit different, is that a differential of 15 more minutes back in my day? Or is that a differential of we save X amount of money to bring on somebody new in the warehouse? Like, I know that I'm constantly looking at the data of my life and being like, that's a little thing that I can patch up. Because people are always like, how do you get so much work done? I'm like, well, because I just have a system and I've realized what matters and I don't touch what doesn't.
Yep, for sure. I am through and through creative, visionary, like chasing shiny object kind of guy. And I know that. And because I know that, I'm the guy that's trying to fit 100 pounds of crap in a 50-pound bag.
Yeah.
Right. But at the end of the day, I know I
perfected that one, Tyler.
yes, but at the end of the day, and throughout the day, I constantly remind myself that I really only have a 50-pound bag.
Yeah.
And I've got to figure out what are the things that I say yes to and what are the things, and I don't like saying no.
Right. None of us.
That makes me feel bad. And so I've been saying not right now. And if it's something I think is really cool, I throw it on a spreadsheet and keep it in a folder. And then, every 3 months or something, I look at that list and I'm constantly trying to figure out with that 50-pound bag, what's the 25 pounds that is most important that I got to fit in that bag. If I only have a 50-pound bag, then 25 pounds of it is going to be the most important things. And if that's all I get to, then my bag's pretty solid.
I've heard somebody else say that to me once before, and they had a different language on it where they basically said, I took everything out of my calendar, I took everything out of my life, and I slowly put one thing back in, but I tried to put it back in the way that made the most amount of sense. And then when I felt like it was complete, everything that I hadn't put in yet, I just literally stopped doing it. It just doesn't fit anymore. And that was from somebody that was at a high level of growth, was working around the clock, getting ready to go for that early grave, and just said, I can't keep doing this. And so their idea was to remove it all. But I love the idea of, you got a 50-pound bag, but like, what's the 25 that matters that you're going to put? So when you got into this next part of your career, where you started doing the public speaking and talking to people and trying to show people the path, how did you figure out how to get it to where people could understand? Because I know that when we're creatives, we speak a language that the rest of the world doesn't. And I think everybody listening will remember the first time that you talked to a client and you started speaking visual language to somebody who's not visual. And they're like, what do you mean it would be red and have a square on it? Like they're like, no, I didn't just pitch you the Japanese flag. Like, what are you talking about? And I'm just curious, like, have you had to, I don't want to say dumb it down, but if you had to try to put a little bit more of like common sense into it or slow the story down, like how did you get it to a moment where you did the speech and afterwards the questions from the audience aligned that they were getting it? Because I've definitely spoke to colleges before and I'm like, yo, that kid focused on the very first thing that I said, which was, I'm a college dropout. And they didn't hear the whole next 2 hours of what I had to say. So like, you can sometimes get feedback from the audience that kind of tells you that they're not really getting in the trenches with your storytelling. Did it take you a while to kind of get it to where you felt like almost anybody could walk in the room and walk away with some guidance from you?
I had this in 10th grade in high school. I had this world history teacher, and this guy was a master storyteller. I would sit in class and just be in awe every single day. And I was like, you know what? I want to be like that guy. And so, without any prompting by anyone, I started taking notes of why this story was so cool. And I was watching comedians and listening of like, well, man, look how they switched that and flipped that in an unexpected way. And so
right? Like they think they're going to say something, then it's their wife. And you're like, well, I didn't see
exactly,
that.
exactly. And so for me, I've just been fascinated with this communication. Right. That ended up being my degree in college, was communication studies, all about public speaking and how to engage with people on a personal level. And my grandpa, he was a very successful international banker. He was the managing director of Exim Bank. So all of the exports and imports and the loans that are going on in that space, he was the managing director there. It was like I don't know, $1 trillion budget or something. And he sat down and he gave me tips throughout my life. But one of the things that he said to me was, if you want to speak and you want to leave an impact with people, tell stories.
Yep.
And so I've just been fascinated with stories ever since. And for me, when I go and I speak, I think of me as everyday average Joe, except my name's Tyler. And what are the stories that have been meaningful to me? And I keep track of those stories. I write them down. I've got lists of stories. Just last night, my kiddos, they love going to bed and they'll say, Dad, tell us a story about this, or about this time in your life, or when, first started playing hockey, or, when you found that giant spider, And so for me, it's all about the storytelling, and anything that you want to teach, figuring out, man, do I have a story that relates to that? And if it's not my story, does someone else have a story that I can share to relate that point? And people remember those stories. And so for me, that's been number one. Anytime I'm speaking or engaging, it's okay, what are the stories that I'm going to share so that people remember it?
Yeah, it's fascinating. My grandmother was an uneducated woman from the mountains of Kentucky, and she would tell you stories, and her catchphrase was, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. But she would tell you these stories and you just be like, there's no way half of this happened, but I can't stop listening. And so I really loved how my Momo told stories. But I tell you, my dad wasn't a real emotionally present guy, but his world stopped at 12 o'clock for 84 WHAS, 84 AM in Louisville, Kentucky, because that's when the syndicated show Paul Harvey would show up.
Yep.
And I was like, who is this guy? Like, nobody talks like this guy. But I found that I would fall in love with the Paul Harvey stories because his delivery was so different. And then he would throw a True Value ad right in the middle of the story. Hold on. Is the murder weapon a hammer? Or are we talking about how Ace Hardware sell? But I started as a child to realize story was a way to command control. And you're absolutely right. In the business world, it is so crucial. And it doesn't surprise me that that's how you're now mentoring, because it's how you built your business, right? It's how you took a notebook and made it stand out in the marketplace, is by attaching a story to it. And to people that are listening, I agree with you. In my iPhone, I'm constantly writing down very like subtle little things. It could be, just a thought that I have. Like, I have this thought now that I'm a part-time cashier because I have to check myself out whenever I'm at the grocery store, And so I just kind of write that down, and that just becomes a thing. Well, I've got the podcast and YouTube and the work that I do for Lincoln, and I'm also a part-time cashier at Ralph's. You never know when something like that, you can sprinkle it in and make somebody smile, and them like, you're a part-time cashier. I'm like, well, I got to check out my own groceries now. And it's just like, it's adding those little personality points in. But I've done the podcast, 1,600 times. And it's those little human moments they get the comments back from the hardcore listeners, and they soak in the big ideas and the big power players and stuff, but it is those little human moments that people relate to, because once again, we're all not so different. We're all not so special. We're really, really similar, even though people try not to see it that way. So when you go out and you start speaking, how do you make sure that that sort of new business that you develop doesn't take you too far away from your core business, right? Because wouldn't it be an interesting story of like, the guy went bankrupt because he spent so much time talking about being successful at business that his business fell apart? Like, how do you keep a balance between the two?
That's a good question. For me, it's the speaking side. I don't even view it as a business.
Okay.
And so that's one way that it helps me is I'm running Denik day in and day out. And then I get cool opportunities because of Denik to go and speak and engage with people. And so to me, whether there's monetary value there or it's just donated time, like it's just something that I get excited to do and to be involved with. And so it's the hobby that sometimes brings in some income here on the side as well. That's how I kind of keep it separate.
I like that, because you look at the speaking as something that you enjoy, and by not full on making it into a business, you don't have the opportunity to make it something that you no longer enjoy. I think that something that you've done also that's very important to focus on, that could easily be overlooked, is that if some people in this world got lucky with a notebook, they'd be thinking, well, if I did this with a notebook, what could I do with pencils? And you've very much kind of stayed in your lane. Like, you've taken the notebook as in many different directions. And I love the idea of the always flat ones, because everybody knows like the burden of the spine, like you can only write so far and then you have to start. But you've done your best to just sort of like conquer that corner of the market. And did you make a conscious decision of like, we can be really, really great at one thing, or we can be meh at a lot of things?
That was pretty hard. I mean, it's been a conscious effort, but we've always been of the mindset of, hey, well, we should be throwing some other things out there and seeing if it sticks. But at the end of the day, it always comes back to, we're really good at notebooks. We're really good at, selling our notebooks in retail settings. We're really good at making custom notebooks for other companies and brands and artists. Like, that's what we're really good at the end of the day. And so we just continue to focus on it. And rather than thinking about more, we're thinking about better, better, better.
Yeah.
And, we believe that if you focus on being better, more will come.
Yes.
And you'll continue to grow.
And better in many ways feels like it's more in our control than focusing on scale, right? Like,
Sure.
we've done this thing, we've done it 1,000 times. Let's do it a little bit better on the 1,001th pass around the sun. Let's get it a little bit better, a little bit more dialed in. You know your space, you know your partners, you know your margins, you know all that stuff. Every time you experiment and go someplace else, what's going to happen is you're going to start putting so much energy on that new product that the current line is going to get stagnant. And I've come to realize that we only have like so much energy in this world. And you think, I got this thing dialed in, I'm gonna go do something else. And then you look back and you're like, holy shit, it all, where did it all go? I'd stop looking at it for 2 minutes. Where did it all go? So I love the idea that you focus in, because also I believe in this world of just chaos that we live in, it's real easy. You guys do one thing, you do it better than most. And it's not like, well, they're a stationary company that do this and they do that. Like, I love that you've had the discipline to keep it in there, even though sometimes that's probably been like a thing that you got to fight with. But I see so many brands. It's like, I look at them like, what if you just would have stayed with posters and you didn't get into vinyl records and vinyl toys and board games and trying to scale? Like, what if you just stayed at the thing that you were best at? I bet it'd be probably a very different company right now.
Yep, for sure. I when I'm talking to artists, one of the things I say is, if you go to the McDonald's down the street from your house and the McDonald's down the street from my house, that Big Mac, thank you so much, tastes the exact same.
Yeah.
And that right there, that's branding. Consistency is branding. When people know what to expect, that's a brand,
Yeah.
right? And so to be able to deliver something consistently, no matter whose house you're at, and no matter which menu they're looking at, no matter where they buy the Big Mac, it's the same. And so for us, that's how we've viewed it, even though it has been hard for sure. Right?
Oh, I imagine.
It's been a challenge, and we've been asked over the years to try all types of things, from big companies that want us to print their whole novel for them, or it's just not the same. It's not in our core focus, and we've really seen that if you focus on what you do well at, you can scale it and you can continue to get better. I actually have a sticky note right here. It was a video I watched of Gary Vee. He said, again, we're going to talk about that word niche or niche, however you want to say it. He says, find a niche, deliver more value than anyone else, and crush it.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much what you've done. And let's reverse engineer the math, right? Your notebook company is crazy, or stationery company is crazy, because it looks like an artist's portfolio. It looks like a design studio, because when you go to your homepage, it shows like all the clients that you've worked with, which is like, what am I looking at here? When you do work with, Nike, for example, I know that's one of your clients.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are the stationery guy that is focused in on one thing, they absolutely know where you fit in their ecosystem. They trust you because you're a valued like partner with that one item that you do. And they can look at it and go, this guy does this for us. And that's so much easier when you get it down to one thing. And, I've been battling the social media algorithms, for years.
Yep.
I've come to find that what YouTube wants you to do is they want you to make the same video every time. Every time. Same video, so that they know with confidence who to send that video to, and that they can keep sending it back. And so if you want to do lots of different things, that's called lots of different YouTube channels.
Mm-hmm.
Your second channel, it'll take off because you're already known in that space. But then you find yourself pulled between the two different ones. So I look at you as I look at a lot of very successful people that literally just focused in on one thing. David Dobrik talks in his basement, gives you the news faster than any human can ever possibly talk. The videos are always the same length. He has sort of the same candor. It's very easy to understand. So every day YouTube can be like, we know the 800,000 people to show this to. If David's like eating ice cream with his kids, completely confuses people. And I because you are so singular in your focus, I know you're going to love this analogy. I heard somebody once say, thinking about your business or what you offer people, they said, imagine if you went to this place that makes the best donuts in the world. You go there Sunday morning, you're ready to have a cheat day, you're ready to eat a donut for breakfast, and they're like, ta-da, we now make salads. You're going to be so bummed out when you get there. And so I love that you focused on donuts and said, to hell with vegetables. I love that about you. That's your famous quote, right?
Yes, I love that. I've been preaching it for years, and we actually have a ton of donuts right now out in the lunch area. So yes, I appreciate you bringing that up. It's good stuff.
When you do focus on one thing though, and you've gotten really good at what you do, how do you keep pushing yourself? Is it bigger sales, more artists, more fundraising, building more schools? I mean, dude, the first time you actually put all that money together to build one of these schools and know that like the company has fully gone full circle. Like, what was a dream? Like, oh, we might be able to give $5,000 towards a bigger project, but like your company firsthand, single-handedly has changed children's lives around the world. That's got to be the best type of tear that you ever shed.
Yep, it is for sure. I remember it was over 3 years in, hustling. I mean, traveling in a car, New York to LA, farmers markets, art walks, gallery events, even doing 5Ks. Like, whatever we could do to set up and talk to people, we did it. And we just hustled and told everybody our story. And we did that for 3 years. And finally, we had the funds to build a school. And from that, I remember, telling millions of people, right, what we're doing. It felt like millions.
Yeah.
Through all these events, and then posting on our Instagram and socials like, hey, we've funded the school, and celebrating, high-fiving. It's me and two other guys in our little 10 by 10 office, and we're just pumped. And then we just get back to work, and then about an hour later I get a phone call, and I'm like, oh, it's my mom. Why is my mom calling me? And I answer it, and when I pick it up, my mom is sobbing. And I'm like, Mom, what's wrong? Are you
Yeah.
okay? And she's just sniffled for a minute, and then she said, I'm so proud of you guys. You have funded an entire school.
Yeah.
And then to get the pictures and to see it progress and build, and and then to hear the stories of these students, and to even get to go to some of the schools. And it's been amazing, and it's been a lot of fun.
Think about how many people you and I have connected with over our lifetimes. How many people have heard you speak, listen to my podcast? How many times we've bumped into somebody and said, well, I would maybe do it this way, or I would do it that way. Like, think about how many lives you and I have touched. And that school that you've built is doing that for multiple people every single day. Like, an educated person is a person that has a chance to change the world. Tyler, I've talked to a lot of people who have done a lot of crazy things, but man, that's about the most humbling thing that I can think of, is like helping somebody just get their education and have a safe space to go to. A lot of kids during the pandemic, they could feel that they didn't have that lunch or that space away from mom's boyfriend for 8 hours. Like, you have no idea beyond the curriculum what you're offering for these people, just to have a place to go, to be warm, to be dry. Like, I don't know, man. I know when Tom started doing that, a lot of people got into it. And hey, if something's going to be trendy, let's let charity be a cool trendy that we all don't naysay and talk shit about, right?
Absolutely. That I feel the same way. You should offer, in a business standpoint, you should offer an amazing product or service that adds value to people's lives, and you should do a little bit of good with it. Like, no matter what your business is, whether that's the forefront of your marketing or just the foundational piece of your business, right? Do some good with it, and make an impact. At the end of the day, when people are driving down the street and they're picking out a house and they want to buy a house, they see the house, but before they buy it, they want to make sure that foundation is good, right? It's the same with your product or service. If you have a product on shelves or online, it's got to catch people's attention. It's got to be a beautiful house. And then if they look and go, oh, but it also does this good, right? The foundation is also good. That's just an added bonus. And I know that I have friends who have built nonprofits, and they have said, selling a nonprofit, even though doing the best things in the world is really hard, to say, hey, can you give us some money out of the goodness of your heart?
Yeah.
Versus a social enterprise, a for-profit business that's using profits for good. It's, here's something that you need or want, and we're going to do some good with it too. That's a different sell. And I know I've got nonprofit friends who have said, I wish we would have gone this route. I think we'd do even more. So
yeah, I always told designers too, I'm like, hey, like, figure out who you want to donate your talents to. Like, find, if it's the animal shelter in your town, let that be your charity, but you decide who you give to. Don't let people hit you up all the time for free design or free this. Like, you decide who you give to. And when somebody asks you, go, sorry, man, we already donate for the animal shelter like around the corner or whatever. Like that's our core, but you got to find some place to give back. I also feel like as a creative person, it's like a certain amount of responsibility to give back, you know, because it's just like the world's better for what we all do. And if you could do it for somebody else, it comes back to you. And, you know, something that I love that you said is like, if you just focus on being your best, you do get more because that shines through. How do you find at this far in that you don't get bored or complacent? Like, how are you still challenging yourself, Tyler?
It's constantly looking for new innovations, you know, new partnerships, new technology. As more and more technology advances, it's, hey, how can we use this to be better? You know, we kind of look at it as we're building an engine of this really rad car, and what are the pieces, what are the parts that we need to upgrade and continue to improve? And for me, that's a massively creative process of, okay, we have resources now, and then saying, what else can we do? That's that I can get lost in that world a little bit. And it's energizing
Yeah.
to just say, you know what, I'm just going to explore the world a little bit today and come up with some new ideas.
Yeah.
And so for me, I get to do that once a week for an hour a week, a few days in a row. That to me is incredibly energizing, and I know that there's going to come some value from that to help steer where the company is going. And so that's how I continue to stay engaged. And then it's also things like this where, you know, giving back and finding ways to support other people and help people avoid some of the headaches that, man, I got for years. So
I mean, it's like if you can give anybody a shortcut to just sort of circumvent some of the BS that you had to go through, like just to get them on that straight line of success a little bit faster. I love doing that. I want to share with you a story that I think that you'll enjoy as I say goodbye to you today. It was like a Sunday morning, and I was watching Charles Kuralt, who was the Sunday morning news guy over on CBS Sunday Morning. You know, the show with the crazy horn solo that it opens up. So it was like his greatest hits. And I saw the story, and when I was looking at your notebooks and everything and building the schools, it reminded me of you, where there was like the crazy old lady, right? That everybody knew the crazy. She was the can lady. She was always going up and down the street with the grocery cart and the cans. Nobody really knew her backstory. She was just like the town weirdo that everybody give cans to, the can lady. So one day, the can lady goes to the, you know, town square, to the city hall of where she lived, and said that she wanted the kids in that town that she lived in to have a public swimming pool. And they told her, well, like that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. And she's like, yeah, I know. That's why I was collecting all these cans. And so she'd been collecting cans for decades, putting every penny into an account to take that money to build a swimming pool for the kids, because she never got to swim in a pool when she was a little girl, and always thought that that would be the best thing ever, is to have a swimming pool. And so since she didn't get one, she wanted to build one for every kid that lived in her neighborhood. And I sat there with a face full of tires. I'm like, face full of not tires, face full of tears. And I said, I love the can lady. The can lady's like the nicest lady in the world. And so when I look at your company, it's a notebook, it's art, it's community. It could be a lot of things, but you've put a lot of good into it. And I really wanted to tell you that story, and just tell you that I love what you're doing, because there's so many different ways this could have gone, but I think you chose the right way.
oh man, I appreciate that very much. I appreciate that story and being here with you. It's been a blast, and excited to see what the future brings. And hopefully it's more opportunities to connect with great creatives and do some good. Let's design some good in the world.
I'm excited to see it Into the Woods too, because of how we've curated the audience and how we're all staying at the lodge together. Like, I think that, you know, sometimes you probably speak to 101 crowds. I think you're going to be speaking to an advanced level crowd. And because we're all there together for the entire weekend, I think it's going to be amazing how, you know, people can see the speech. You're a very approachable guy. You're a very nice guy. And be like, hey man, can I just get like 5 seconds to customize that bit of advice to what I'm dealing with? And I could just see your eyes light and be like, let's get into it, man.
Let's go.
Build this business, bro.
Yep, yep, I love it. I'm pumped for that. It's gonna be fun. Stoked to see you up there. So
Awesome. Tyler, thank you for your time and your conversation, man. This was so much fun.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you.